In 1917, a widow in Youngstown, Ohio, made more running a boarding house than her late husband had earned on the mill floor. No permits, no investors. Just 3 spare rooms, a coal stove, and a pot of oatmeal. She kept going from 5 in the morning until the last shift change came through. Before the gig economy turned side income into a LinkedIn hashtag, industrial towns in Pennsylvania and Ohio were already running 2 and 3 of these operations out of every 3rd house on the block. Number 15 on this list involved paper, ink, and a kind of daily desperation that turned ordinary boys into small businessmen almost overnight. Number 4, the one about door-to-door bond sales, moved $6 billion nationally and used guilt as the primary sales tool. And number 1, the one that started as a government poster campaign, produced families out-earning factory wages from vacant lots. These 15 hustles paid for coal deliveries in winter, kept boots on children's feet, and covered rent when the man of the house shipped out. They were not hobbies. They were the infrastructure of survival. Before we start, hit subscribe, because some of these might actually still work today. Let's count down the 15 forgotten World War I-era hustles that kept American neighborhoods running when the whole country was pointed at a war. Number 15 is where it started for a lot of boys: newspaper selling. When the U.S. entered the war in April 1917, circulation spiked overnight. Boys who held corner routes understood something fast. When people are scared and waiting for word, they hand over a nickel before they've stopped walking. A corner route in a busy district moved 50 to 100 papers on a slow morning. Work 2 peak periods, and you cleared $3 to $4 a week, enough for a family's flour and salt for the month. Boys who grabbed multiple corners near factory gates during shift change cleared $6 to $7 in a good week. Most families in mill towns had no telephone. The paper was the only way a woman at home found out whether her son's regiment had moved. By the 1920s, publishers shifted towards subscription delivery, and the independent corner seller was mostly gone. The window had been about 8 years. That was enough. 14 ran on ice and muscle. War production flooded cities like Gary and Bethlehem with tens of thousands of new workers. Housing went up fast. Cold storage didn't keep pace. An ice route operator bought 100-pound blocks at 25 cents to 40 cents and resold by the chunk at 10 cents to 15 cents. Working 40 to 60 stops, he netted $8 to $12 a week. One operator in Allentown serviced 11 boarding houses on a single street and cleared more than the foreman at the plants his customers worked in. The electric refrigerator existed after 1913, but spread slowly. Only 8% of homes had one by 1930. Most ice routes folded between 1935 and 1945, when GE's mass market models arrived. 13 ran on horses when trucks couldn't. Fuel allocation shifted hard toward military and industrial use in 1917. Civilian deliveries got squeezed. Horses did not. An operator with a horse and wagon picked up contracts motor carriers were dropping. Bread, coal, dry goods, laundry. A bakery contract ran $7 to $10 a week. Add a laundry account, and you were pulling $15 from one animal. Feed and stabling cost $3 to $5. The net worked. When gas rationing eased and trucks got cheaper, the economics flipped. Independent horse wagon routes in cities were rare by 1928. 12 is the one with the lowest overhead of anything on this list. Telephone service in 1917 was partial at best. Businesses needed documents moved fast. A young man with a bicycle and knowledge of city streets was a business. A working messenger in a mid-sized city like Scranton or Erie earned $4 to $6 a week. One Trenton shop owner paid a neighborhood boy 25 cents per round trip to the rail freight office. Twice daily, 6 days a week, $3 from a single account. The overhead was a patch kit and tire air. Between 1915 and 1920, telephone subscriptions in American cities more than doubled. The casual independent messenger was largely gone by 1922. If you've run any of these yourself, or know someone who did, drop it in the comments. I want to hear what survived into your grandparents' generation. Number 11. Laundry routes. Factory shifts ran 10 to 12 hours. Women managing boarding houses and feeding workers didn't have time to boil, scrub, and wring the laundry 4 or 5 boarders produced every week. A laundry route operator in Pittsburgh charged 75 cents to $1 per household per week. A route of 20 customers brought in $15 to $20, more than most factory floor jobs paid men. One operator in Gary expanded to 35 customers by 1918, brought in her daughter and a neighbor, and each still cleared more than $6 a week. Electric washing machines hit the mass market in the late 1920s. By 1935, the customer base had thinned badly. Most of the women who'd run those routes never talked about it later. 10 ran on rationing and a cellar full of jars. When the Food Administration launched its campaign in 1917, wheatless Mondays, meatless Tuesdays, urban households didn't grow anything. Women on the fringes of industrial cities had garden access, cellar space, and the skill to can and pickle. A quart jar of canned tomatoes sold for 15 cents to 20 cents. A woman producing 40 to 50 jars a week through peak summer earned $6 to $8, doing work she was already doing to feed her own household. By the mid-1920s, Del Monte and Heinz had flooded grocery shelves. By 1930, you were selling to neighbors who chose homemade, not neighbors who needed it. That is a different kind of customer entirely. Most of what we've covered so far was filling holes in the distribution layer of daily life. The next group moved deeper, into the kitchen, the laundry, the very fabric of what people wore. These weren't supplemental incomes for most of the people running them. These were the income. The husband's factory wage paid the landlord. Everything else came out of what the household could generate on top of that. Nobody had a name for what they were doing. They just did it because the gap was there and they were standing in it. Number 9. The boarding house. War production contracts flooded steel, munitions, and textile cities starting in 1915. Workers followed, from the South, from Eastern Europe, from rural counties. They needed a bed, a meal, and somewhere to wash. A woman in a Pittsburgh industrial district charged $3.50 to $5 per boarder per week. Room, 2 meals, and laundry. 6 boarders cleared $21 to $30. Fixed costs were coal, food, and soap. A federal study of Pennsylvania industrial housing in 1918 found that boarding house operators were out-earning most of the men whose rent they were collecting. One widow in Bethlehem, who started with 2 spare rooms in 1915, was running 8 boarders by 1918, with income exceeding what Bethlehem Steel paid a department foreman. Nothing has solved that same problem as efficiently since. Number 8 started as charity. Some women figured out it didn't have to stay that way. The Red Cross launched its knitting campaign in 1917. Socks, mufflers, wrist warmers for soldiers. The women who turned it into income understood something else. Wool rationing on commercial goods meant a ready civilian buyer. A steady knitter producing 3 to 4 pairs of wool socks a week sold them at 35 cents to 50 cents a pair. Add mufflers and fingerless gloves, and she was generating $3 to $4 a week from needles and yarn. Machine knit goods recovered supply by 1920, and the premium collapsed. The knitting trade went back to being a domestic skill. It just stopped earning. Number 7 was a small manufacturing business that happened to run out of someone's house. When the Army's Quartermaster Corps issued subcontracts for tents, kit bags, and field covers, the overflow went to whoever had machines and floor space. A 3-person shop with 2 industrial sewing machines producing pack bags at 15 cents per unit could complete 80 to 100 units a day. $72 to $90 for a 6-day week. from a building that still had someone's kitchen in the back. When the armistice came in November 1918, contracts were canceled within weeks. Not tapered, canceled. Shops that had borrowed to buy a second machine found themselves with heavy capacity and no buyer. Most closed before Christmas. The whole run had lasted under 2 years. 2 very profitable years that ended on a Tuesday when a wire arrived from Washington. Number 6 started with leather, or the absence of it. The War Department rationed civilian leather in 1917. Most output was redirected to military boots. New shoes became expensive and slow to arrive. A cobbler who'd been making a modest living suddenly found himself in an economy where repair wasn't a preference. It was the only option. A busy shop handling 15 to 20 pairs a day earned $5 to $8 daily. One cobbler in Brockton ran a 6-week waiting list through all of 1917 and 1918 without advertising once. The war had done his marketing for him. The trade declined slowly across decades as shoes got affordable enough that families stopped repairing and started replacing. The final blow came in the 1960s and 1970s when synthetic soles replaced leather, and synthetics don't resole. A craft that had supported families across 3 generations ended quietly, without announcement, when the last men who knew it retired. Number 5 is where the government brought the work directly into the house. The War Department needed fabric labor at scale. The solution was piece-rate home contracting. Women sewing government specification garments in their own rooms, paid per completed unit. 7 cents to 12 cents per shirt. 15 cents to 20 cents per pair of trousers. 25 cents to 35 cents for a heavier overcoat. Women who organized small home sewing groups, 4 women, 2 apartments, shared contracts, regularly hit $8 to $10 a week per person. One operation in Lawrence, Massachusetts had 7 women in 2 adjacent apartments earning over $60 a week during peak 1918 production. The contracts ended with the armistice, overnight. The Women's Bureau noted in 1919 that the system had simply ceased to exist. The expertise remained, distributed across 1 million households. It just stopped being paid for. Number 4 was about guilt. The Treasury Department understood this and built a sales infrastructure around it. When the Liberty Loan drives launched in 1917, the men who actually moved the paper worked on commission, door-to-door, factory gates, movie theater parking lots on Saturday night. A bond salesman earned 50 cents to $1 per $100 bond sold. A man who moved $2,000 in bonds in a week was earning $20 to $30 in commission. The Fourth Liberty Loan Drive in 1918 raised over $6 billion nationally. Nobody came to your door to sell you a Liberty bond and made it feel like a financial transaction. They made it feel like the war. The drives ended with the war. Many of these men moved into insurance sales. The house call, the pressure that came from sitting across from a family in their own kitchen, the tool changed. The technique didn't. Number 3 ran on coal and timing. Every home in the industrial Northeast burned coal for heat. Between 1917 and 1918, the men who knew the routes were going into uniform. An independent delivery operator who moved into that gap bought short tons at $4 to $5 and resold at $6.50 to $7.50. Delivering 5 to 6 tons a day, he cleared $7 to $15 on the margin. Through the severe shortage of winter 1917 to 1918, bad enough that the Federal Fuel Administration began rationing in January, a man with an existing customer list and a reliable supply relationship held something close to a local monopoly. Oil furnaces arrived in working-class neighborhoods in the 1940s and 1950s. Natural gas followed. By 1970, coal heat was a memory in most American cities. Number 2 was about metal that was already sitting somewhere, not being used. When war production accelerated, steel and munitions factories needed more raw material than mining could supply. Iron, copper, and brass moved to premium prices. The person willing to do the collecting could step into real money. A collector paid 1 cent to 2 cents per pound for iron, 5 cents to 8 cents for copper and brass. He sold to scrap dealers at 3 cents to 4 cents for iron, 12 cents to 18 cents for copper. The arithmetic wasn't complicated. The knowledge was which households had it, which grades the dealers preferred. You learned it by doing it, and you didn't write it down. The scrap trade never fully died. EPA classifications in the 1970s and local licensing in the 1980s put the informal operator mostly out of business. But the logic never went away. It just got licensed, scaled, and stripped of the neighborhood knowledge that made the original version work. Number 1. The U.S. Food Administration's Victory Garden campaign launched in 1917 with posters and slogans. By 1918, an estimated 3 to 5 million families had planted something. Most were doing what the posters asked. Some families understood something the campaign literature did not say out loud. Surplus produce sells. A 2,000 square foot urban plot worked seriously through a full season generates more than a household can eat. Sold at 5 cents per pound through the height of summer, that surplus was $3 to $6 a week through July, August, and September. One Cleveland family cultivating 3 adjacent vacant lots was clearing $8 to $10 a week by August 1918, selling directly to boarding houses and factory cafeterias. The father was working at a wire factory. The garden was out-earning him. When the war ended, commercial agriculture restabilized, and most victory gardens were abandoned by 1921. What was lost wasn't the garden. It was the understanding that a 2,000 square foot plot can do 2 things at once: feed the family and earn money doing it. How to look at a vacant lot and see an income stream. How to read a season and know which boarding house on which block would buy tomatoes by the case. That knowledge didn't get recorded. It got old, and it died with the people who held it. What all 15 had in common wasn't ingenuity. It was position. Every hustle on this list worked because the person running it was already inside the network they were selling into. The knowledge was the actual capital. It had no price and left no record. The currency was local reputation. No rating system, no platform. Just the fact that you lived 3 streets over and people knew what your word was worth. What killed most of it was efficiency. Every time a formal industry arrived with a consistent product at a lower price, the informal operator lost the economic case. What went with the efficiency was the knowledge that lived inside the work itself. It didn't get archived. It got retired. Try one. Pick up a vacant lot or a laundry route or a delivery gap your grandmother would recognize. The old logic still holds better than you'd think.